Alright, this is what we're going to be creating today, this nifty black and white text animation. First thing we need to do is look at get the fonts. So there's two fonts, and you can get them from defont.com. There's Breeze, and then there's also Freshman. So if you're going to use those, go ahead and grab them. On After Effects, we're going to come up to Composition, New Composition, do 1920 by 1080, frame rate of 30, and probably a duration of about 10 seconds here. Let's click OK. There we go. We'll go ahead and grab our type tool. We're going to type in vintage. Oh, it's already set up. So this is our type. You can set the set the font to Freshman over here. The color is just all black. And then the stroke here, if you double click that, if it decides to open up, there we go, is all white. And then it's got a stroke of 9, and then the font size is 165. Another thing we can do here is that if you have some gaps, some weird gaps between your characters, if you place your cursor in between the characters and you hold down Alt, you can kern, hold down Alt and use your arrow keys. We can go ahead and bring it in a little bit, make it a little bit tighter. Let's do it right about there. It's a neat trick. And then we're going to go ahead and grab the position real quick here. Right click and do reset just to put it in the center. And then go ahead and roll this down. And there's a couple different ways we can animate this. One way is to break each letter off into a different layer, then animate that. But we want to, that's a little more cumbersome than I want. So instead we're going to add an animator here. So we're going to do the scale. And then we have a range selector here. And we're going to set the start to 100. Bring the scale down to 0. And then there we go. If we roll the end back and forth, you can see how it's going to animate. So bring it down to 0. Add a keyframe. We'll go to 1 second. And then bring it all the way up to 100. And there we go. That looks pretty good, but I kind of want it to bounce a little bit. So what we're going to do is go ahead and select the animator and then hit Control-D, Command-D, and we'll duplicate it. And let's see, we're going to start's going to be at 100. The scale is going to be at 120, like that. And then let's see here. And let's see if we can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Move these bottom keyframes over about 5 frames. There we go. That's what I want. So basically, the what's happening is the first one is scaling it up to 100, and then the second one is set to 120. So it's actually the second one adds that extra 20%, and then as the keyframes start, then each character gets animated back down to 100. So that's sort of how that bounce works, how it bounces in like that. There we go. So there's that. And we need texture. This one's really subtle. You can kind of see in the video preview. We're going to go ahead and do Control-Y to create a new solid. You can also come up here and do new solid this way as well. We're just call this fractal noise. Should be the same comp size. We're going to go ahead and do that. And then in our effects and presets, we'll add fractal noise. We're not doing much with this. So there's that. All we really have to do is go to the transform and change the scale down to 1. To 1. Not that big. There we go. Doesn't look like much, but that's what we're using. And so we're going to go ahead and duplicate our text. Control-D. We're going to move that above the fractal noise. And we're going to come back to character and just remove the border completely. Just bring it all the way down to 0. Now we're going to use this as a alpha matte. I think that's what we're going to do. There we go. That's what we want. And then take the fractal noise, hit T for opacity, and bring that down to 17%. And there we go. You can see it's a subtle It's more noticeable when the background is the same, has that noise too. And this fractal noise isn't animated or anything, so it's static. This won't be moving at all. But it looks like it's got kind of a gritty texture to it a little bit. And I think that's all we're doing for this. Keep in mind that if you decide to change the animation, that you'll have to, let's do that, you'll have to change these keyframes on both these layers are synced up. So if you change one, then you have to change the other as well. So that's how that works. Alright, so this comp one we'll call, I don't know, vintage text original. How's that sound? There we go. And let's see. So we're going to go ahead and take this vintage text original, drop it into a new comp right here. There we go. So we still have our animation. We're going to go ahead and duplicate it. And we want it to give it a little bit of a 3D look. So turn on both 3D layers here. Grab the position. The bottom one is going to be set back in the Z about 30. And then we're just going to add 20 to X and Y. So that'll be 980 and then 560. There you go. So it's going to look like that. That's our vintage. There we go. That looks good. What else here? So we're going to add a star now. Add the stars. Go ahead up here, click on the star tool. And just go ahead and double click so it adds it automatically to the comp. If you have a layer selected, it might add a mask to that layer, so make sure no layers are selected when you double click up here. We're going to go ahead and scale this down to about 6.6. Bring that all the way down to 6.6, so it's pretty small right there. And then it scales down the border as well, so we're going to compensate for that and bring that all the way up to 50. We're going to go ahead and grab that, move it, there we go, grab that and move it right over here in this area. And we're going to animate this, and then we're going to duplicate it and put it on the other side, so we don't have to create the animation twice. So let's see, hit the scale, let's move to 5 frames, create the keyframe. Go back to 0, set it to 0 on the scale, and then because we're going to give this a bounce as well, we're going to go down to 12 keyframes in, and we're just going to create another keyframe at 6.6. So this keyframe and this keyframe are both at 6.6%. Go ahead, select all those, hit F9. On a Mac you might have to right click, go to keyframe or interpolation and choose Bezier. But on a PC you can just hit F9. So select the scale. We're going to open the graph editor right here. So this is what our graph looks like, and there's a bit of an issue here. As you can see, these handles are not locked together, so what we're going to do is select that, do right click, keyframe keyframe interpolation is what we want, and then we're going to choose continuous Bezier. Hit OK, and now you can see that those two handles are locked together. So we're just going to drag it. Let's move this one up here so it's pointing in that direction. Move this down here so it's pointing along that line, and then we're just going to drag this up a little bit. So we're overshooting is essentially what we're doing. So it's going to, let's see, yeah, see how it bounces? It bounces too big and then it settles back to the 100%. So you can see with the star right there. Let's scoot over here. See with the star and solo it. See how it bounces, but we could use a little more bounce. So we're going to go ahead and drag this up some more. Let's try that. Yeah, that actually looks pretty good. There we go. Yeah. We'll go ahead and name our layer star left. We can unsolo that. Just duplicate the star left, Control D, Command D. We'll call this one star right. And we're going to grab it. Let's move down a little bit to make sure everything's in place. We're going to just drag it all the way over to the right. Because we haven't animated the position, we can go ahead and drag this around, and it's not going to create any keyframes for us. It's just the keyframes are only on the scale. There we go. So the other thing we have to do is create that nifty border. So what we're going to do is come here, we're going to add a grid, and then go to View, Snap to Grid. So that means when we click on the grid, it'll snap to the grid. We're going to grab the pen tool. It's G is the shortcut on your keyboard. If you haven't used the pen tool, this should be real fun for you. That's the center. So we want to create a point at the center. This is the center right here. So we're going to add it to right here. We'll probably have to move that. Oftentimes when you have the grid set up like this, the first point you add will not stick to the grid for some reason. I don't know why After Effects does that, but it does. So just click there, and then we're going to click probably, I don't know, let's say right here. Click and drag. You want to drag it about 2, bring out the handles and drag it about 2 blocks there. We're also going to bring this down to 9. There we go. And then re-click here. Then we're going to add another one here. No reason to drag. And we already have that line there to give us a curve. We're going to come down here. I'm not sure exactly how sort of long we need this to be, so we're just going to eyeball it for right now. Click and drag by 2. And then bring it here. And then where are we at in this line? Do click and drag by 2. There we go. Click and drag by 2. There we go. Actually, you know what? I don't need the whole thing. I only need half of the thing. So just leave it right here. You only need half. I'll show you why in a second. So there we go. We have half of our border. Make sure this is snapped in place. Yeah. There we go. So now what we're going to do is we'll call this border right. We're going to come to add. We're going to use trim paths. This is how we animate lines and shapes and stuff. Let's see here. And then, yeah, all we have to do is animate this end property to draw it on. So we're going to bring it down to 0 and 0 at the timeline, and then move forward. Let's see, probably about a second. Let's do a second. Then bring it up to 100. And let's get rid of the grid now. The grid actually slows down After Effects a little bit. There we go. And go ahead and select this, hit F9, so we can get an easy ease. There we go. Now all we have to do to add our other side is duplicate, Control D, duplicate the border, change this to left, then bring up scale, uncheck this link, and then set this to -100. There we go. Because we started the shape at the exact center of the composition, that's why we were able to do this, because it just flips it. So now we have that. Pretty neat. Cool. Let's go ahead and save our project real quick here. And now let's do the design text. So we're going to go ahead and create a new composition. Everything should be the same. This comp one, we'll call it design text. We'll do this in lowercase. Nine on the stroke, and then we're also going to set it to breeze. There we go, breeze personal use, and it should not be all capitals. It should be like that. This font size should be set to 80, so not terribly big. Bring up position. We'll go ahead and right click and reset the position of that. And then, actually, let's go ahead and let's make this a little bit bigger. We can resize it later. Do it to 160. There we go. This is our design. Then we also need our noise mat because we need to add noise to this as well. So we're going to go ahead and grab our fractal noise. Go ahead and copy that. Duplicate this design. On the top design, design 2, here we're going to bring the stroke down to 0. So we just have that. Looks good. Go ahead and paste our noise in. And we're going to set it to, this is an alpha as well, and then make sure that top layer is turned off. So there we go. You can actually see we have the texture showing there. And then the other thing we have to do is, for this bottom design, we're going to add a drop shadow. And we change the color to white. Set the opacity to 100%. The distance is going to be 2. This is a way to give us sort of like a long shadow. Let's see what it looks like turned off. There we go. And now we're going to just take that and Control D a few times till we have 5 of them. 4, 5. See how it pushes out like that? Makes it look, actually makes it look 3D, even though it's totally not. And that is our design there. So come back into Vintage Text Original 2 with the border and everything else. We're going to go ahead and bring, so we're going to take Original 2, actually let's just change this to 2, it's not the original anymore. We're going to drop this in a new composition, and we'll call it Vintage Bend. So that's fun. Let's see. Make sure you have your layer selected and CC bend it. There's a few different ways to sort of bend text, but the CC bend it is probably the best one. You can use warp, but warp will actually deform the text, and it looks like CC bend it tries not to deform the text. So let's see, that's the end. We're going to move the top one over here, the bottom one over here. So we have the, and then if we play with the bend, you can see how it's gonna. Actually, we need to do it the other way. So bring this over here, this over here, and then for both of these, make sure they have the same Y value. So we'll just go with 46, and then we're going to set it to -30. Like that. We're a little bit, let's try pushing this up. Actually, you know what we need to do is bend it, tends to push things out of the frame. So let's go back to the Vintage Text 2. We're going to grab everything here. And we're just going to move it up in the frame like this. Since no positions are being animated, it should not affect anything, and it does not. Come back to Vintage Bend, and there we go. We don't have to worry about it pushing it in a weird way. Now we need to, let's check this off real quick. Bring this back to 0. CC Bend. Oh yeah, here we go. We're going to move it up. Let's move it closer to the edges here and make sure that we're at the same 282, same Y value, and now bring it down to -30 is what we want. There we go. So now it's bent. Now here's the fun part. Click on your layer, hit R, rotate the thing. Probably 30 degrees here. We're going to have to eyeball this. I'm not exactly sure the best. If you're not sure, you can hit Control R to bring up your rulers, and then go ahead and drag it down to make sure that you're sort of in the ballpark. And let's see if we can rotate it a little bit more like that. There we go. So that's about right. And then we're going to grab our design text, bring it, we're going to put it on top, I think. Yeah, that's what we want to do. We're going to push it down, about like this. Move it over. We'll go ahead. We're not going to worry too much about centering in this one. I mean, we'll worry about the design being centered, but we're not going to worry about this whole thing being centered because this is going in another comp in just a minute. So that looks about right. There we go. So right about, let's do right about here. You can hit the square or the square left or right brackets on your keyboard, and that'll move the layer to where the CTI is. This is the current time indicator. That'll move it to where the layer will move to where the CTI is, the beginning of the layer. So we're going to go ahead. Here's a neat trick. Right click on position, separate dimensions. We're just animating the Y position here. We're going to move down to, I don't know, 2, 3, maybe a second to 120. Add the Y position, come back. And all we're going to do is add 50 to this. 640 plus 50. Looks good. And then we're going to grab the opacity, bring it down to 0. Hit U on your keyboard to bring up all the everything, all the properties that are keyed. Come down here and bring the opacity up. Then select both and add a F9 to add the ease. There you go. There is our animation. If we really want to make it look nice, let's go ahead and open the graph editor and drag this. See what this does. There we go. Let's try bringing this in. There we go. That looks pretty good. We're going to take the vintage bend, drag it into another comp. This is our final comp. We'll call this render. We're near the end now. Go back into vintage original. Go ahead and select that fractal noise. Copy it again. Control C. Paste it into here. We're using this as our background. Change the alpha track matte to none. And the weird thing about this is if you don't add another background behind this fractal noise because it's only at 17%, then when it renders, it'll actually render at like 100% or something. So we're going to add another layer, Control Y, Command Y. I'm just going to add a black solid, put that underneath like that, and then also we're going to add another black solid. We'll call this the vignette. We're going to come up here, change this to the ellipse, double click the ellipse, change the mask down here to subtract, hit F for feather. We're going to change this to 300. Then on the vignette, hit T, and we're going to bring it down to say like 30. There we go. And for this vintage bend, let's go ahead and reposition it a little bit here so it's a little more in the center, something like that. And then we're going to scale it down to, let's bring it down to maybe something like that. Turn off tile action safe. There we go. There's our vintage design animation. You can change the colors and do whatever you want here. One of the reasons why this works is the contrast with the white and the dark background. It's pretty noticeable. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Yeah, so I think that's about it. If you're going to render it, and if you don't want to, you could render it in actually inside After Effects, but they changed the codecs and stuff, so you would have to render to like an AV or some, and it would give you some huge gigantic file. Another option is to come up here and do add to Adobe Media Encoder queue, and then you can change it to H.264, which is suitable for stuff like the web, and it'll give you a much smaller file, and just render it out of the Media Encoder. Anyway, I think that's about it. If you have any suggestions of what I should do next, I'm kind of focusing on text type logo animations right now, so if you have any ideas, post them in the comments and let me know what you think. Thanks.